Imagine more than 100 men have moved into your house and they won't leave until you choose one of them to marry. They eat your food, they drink your cellars dry, they lounge in your missing husband's chair, and quietly plot to murder your son. And the one man who could throw all of them out has been gone so long the whole world counts him as dead. You can't fight them, you have no army. You can't run, there's nowhere to go. You can't refuse. Your own family says a widow has to take a new husband, and you will not say yes. So, with no power and no way out, you do the only thing left to do. You find a way to make a house full of armed men sit and do nothing. Season after season, using your own two hands and the most ordinary thing in the house. And not one of them ever sees that they're being played. This is the story everyone gets wrong. They'll tell you it's about the man who spent 2 decades trying to get home. But the sharpest mind in the whole tale belonged to the one who stayed behind. Let me tell you this story from the Odyssey. 20 years. That's how long the king of Ithaca had been gone. 10 of them away at Troy, fighting a war over another man's wife. 10 more lost out on the sea, trying to get home. The whole long journey we've been following, island by island, and in all that time, nobody back on Ithaca had heard a single word. Most people had stopped waiting. They buried him in their minds and moved on. His wife had not. Her name was Penelope. And while her husband was off becoming a legend, she'd been left behind to do the quiet, impossible work. Hold a kingdom with no king, raise a son with no father, and guard a throne that every ambitious man on the islands now wanted for himself. Because this is what happens when a king vanishes and might be dead. The young lords come calling. They came to court Penelope, but really they came for the crown. More than 100 of them, 108 if you counted, sons of the best families on Ithaca and the islands around it. And they did not come politely. They moved into the palace and they stayed. Every day they slaughtered his pigs and his cattle, drank his wine by the barrel, and bellowed for more. They sprawled in his halls like they already owned the place. And every day they pressed Penelope for the same thing. He's dead. Choose a new husband. Choose one of us. Choose me. And quietly, in the corners, the worst of them were planning something darker. Her son, Telemachus, a baby when his father sailed, now nearly grown, was starting to get in their way. So they began to plot how to kill the boy before he was old enough to throw them out. Now think about the box she was in. She couldn't fight them. The army had sailed to Troy 20 years ago and never came back. She couldn't throw them out. Her son wasn't strong enough yet. And a household of armed young nobles doesn't leave because a woman asks. And she couldn't even say no. Because in that world, a queen without a king wasn't a ruler. She was a prize. Whoever married her became the king of Ithaca. So she wasn't just a grieving widow. She was the throne, sitting right there for the taking. Her own father expected her to remarry. Custom expected it. Everyone expected it. And she would not. So there she was. Couldn't fight, couldn't run, couldn't refuse, wouldn't say yes. 108 men eating her house down to the stones, waiting on an answer she would not give. How do you survive that? No weapon, no army, no way out. She found a way. And it is one of the cleverest things anyone does in the whole Odyssey. One day, she came to the suitors with a request, and she made it sound so reasonable, so proper, that not one of them could bring himself to say no. I will choose a husband, she told them. I will, but not yet. First, you have to let me finish one thing. I'm weaving a burial shroud for Laertes, my husband's old father. He's near the end of his life, and when he dies, it would shame this whole house if a great man were laid in the ground with no proper cloth to wrap him. Let me finish the shroud. Then I'll marry. Now, to a Greek, that was almost impossible to refuse. Leaving a man's body unburied with no shroud was one of the deepest horrors they knew. an insult to the dead and to the gods who watched over them. Weaving the death cloth for an old father of the house was a sacred duty, the proper thing, the pious thing. If the suitors had said no to that, they'd have looked exactly like what they were, greedy men with no respect for anything. So they agreed. Take your time, they said, finish it. They had no idea what they had just agreed to. Because every day, Penelope sat at her great loom in the hall in front of everyone, and she wove. Slow, careful, beautiful work. The suitors watched the cloth grow, row by row, and they waited. And they thought, when that's finished, one of us is king. And every night, when the house was asleep, she carried a torch back to the loom, and she undid it. She unpicked the whole day's weaving, thread by thread, and rolled the wool back up as if the sun had never risen on it. Then in the morning she sat down and wove the very same rows again, a shroud that grew all day and vanished all night. She did this for 3 years. And this is where it stops being a clever trick and starts to break your heart. Think about what that cloth actually was. It was a shroud, a thing you make for the dead. And the day she finished it was the day she'd run out of time. The day she'd have to admit her husband was never coming home, fold up his memory, and hand herself to one of those men. So every night, she pulled the death apart with her own hands. She wasn't just stalling 100 suitors. She was refusing over and over, alone in the dark, to let him be dead. Just sit with that for a second. By day, she wove it. By night, she secretly tore it back out, and 100 grown men fell for it for 3 straight years. If watching someone outlast a whole room with nothing but their mind is your kind of thing, then what are you doing not subscribed? Hit subscribe, because this is where it all comes apart. Because a secret only lives as long as the people keeping it. And Penelope had maids, and not all of them were loyal. Some of them had grown close to the suitors, sharing their beds, taking their side, and one of them talked. One night, the suitors came into the hall with torches and caught her in the act, bent over the loom, quietly pulling apart the shroud she'd sworn for 3 years she was trying to finish. There was no explaining it away. They had seen it with their own eyes. They made her sit back down and finish the cloth, right then and there in front of them. The trick was over. The shroud was done. And now they wanted their answer. And right then, at the worst possible moment, with her last excuse gone, a stranger turned up at the palace. An old beggar, filthy, wrapped in rags, leaning on a stick, the kind of man nobody looks at twice. He'd been taken in off the road, the way you took in a wanderer back then, and given a place by the fire. Now, you and I know who that beggar really is. We'd followed him for 10 stories. It's Odysseus, her husband, home at last after 20 years, disguised by the goddess Athena as a broken old man, so he can walk through his own front door and find out who's loyal and who isn't before he makes his move. But Penelope doesn't know that. To her, he's just a stranger by the fire. And that night, she does something she hasn't done in 20 years. She sits down with someone, alone, and she tells the truth. She's worn out. She's out of tricks. There's no one left in that house she can trust. And so she pours it all out to this ragged old man, because what does it matter what a beggar thinks? She tells him about her husband, lost all these years. She tells him about the suitors and the trap she's caught in. And she tells him about the shroud, the loom, the 3 years, the unraveling in the dark, the cleverest thing she ever did. She lays it all out for a stranger. And the stranger is her husband. He's sitting right there, the one person alive who would understand exactly what that trick cost her, who would be proud of her for it, and he can't say a single word to her. He holds that old beggar's face perfectly still while his own wife, who doesn't know him, tells him how long and how lonely 20 years can be. He gives her the only thing he can safely. He tells her he's heard news, that her husband is alive, that he's close, that he's coming home. And she wants to believe it so badly, and she won't let herself. She has hoped too many times. So they sit there by the fire, Two of the most careful, most cunning people who ever lived, an arm's length apart, each one holding something back. She can't trust the hope. He can't drop the disguise, not yet. And this is the thing I want you to see before we go. We call this the story of the man who came home. But there was only a home for him to come back to because she held it together. Alone, outnumbered, for 20 years. Same blood, same gift. He fooled an entire city with a wooden horse. She fooled 100 men with a loom. He survived by calling himself nobody. She survived by never being finished. Penelope is not the prize waiting at the end of the Odyssey. She's the other half of it, the half that never left and never broke. For 3 years, she wove a cloth for the dead and pulled it apart every night. And the one thing she truly refused to finish, the single thread she would never let herself cut, was the hope that he was still out there, somewhere on the dark water, finding his way home. If you know someone who's been quietly holding the line, keeping a whole world together while everyone assumes it's easy, send this video to them. They're who it's really about. And right now on your screen is the whole saga, every chapter in one place. One of my favorites comes next. Her last trick has run out. The house is full of enemies, and a beggar nobody even notices reaches for the one bow no man in that hall can bend. Start from the beginning or keep going from right here. Click it right now, and I'll see you in the next story.